obtain surge warnings for this area.
Just breathe. Bet you never saw this on Shark Week.
They're saying, Jesus Christ.
Here they come! Oh,
Go, go!
I am not.
In the category 5 storm. Let's move!
I'm gonna have him die before he gets to take his first breath.
Just a little bit of work. Sharks on the loose! There's no people, no cars.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Fresh Cuts. This is Mike. Joining me, as always, it's Mr. Venom. What's up, Venom?
Greetings and salutations, oceanographers. Or was he a marine biologist? That's right, he was a marine biologist. Whatever. How the hell you doing, Mike? I'm doing all right.
I am doing well. Another weekend of lots of movies, new ones watched, including the one we're talking about tonight. And that's about it. We had some good thunderstorms here, which is rare because we get rain here in the springtime, but not a lot of thunder and lightning. So it was quite the show. Kind of fun, kind of cool to see.
Oh, same thing here. The skies opened up. I mean, I'm dead serious. Like the rain, people were coming into the store because the rain was hurting them. It was hitting them so hard it would hurt. And then it ended like 10 minutes later. So yeah, the odd spring downpour for Southern California.
Yeah, we get these weird like periods of like if you take like our greater city area where like one portion of the town or the city will get hit with hail, but then the hail doesn't last long enough to like make its way across. So like you'll watch like the evening news and they'll be like, "Oh, there was a downpour of this like frozen hail," and like the whole rest of the city's like, "What?" Like we saw none of that. But yeah, when I was leaving the theater, I think it was Saturday, it was just like lightning going off like rapidly. It was pretty cool. But also with us is Don and Ellie. What's up, Don?
Yeah, what's going on? Always happy to be here.
All right, so this week we forego the theatrical stuff because one, it was okay looking. I mean, I don't think it was anything we were like chomping at the bit to get to anyway. But speaking of chomping, the new movie on Netflix, Thrash, released. So we decided to go with that, much at Don's request. But like, I don't think me or Venom minded either. Just it kind of hit on the right week because like if there was like a big theatrical release, I probably would have wanted to do it, but it was just good time.
And I would have burned down the theaters to make sure we would have covered this one. So we were going to cover it anyway.
All right. Well, that would be Thrash. And let's see. When a Category 5 hurricane decimates a coastal town, the storm surge brings devastation, chaos, and something far more frightening. You guessed it, sharks. Or as IMDb synopsis says, hungry sharks. So we'll start with our general thoughts on Thrash. Venom, you're up first. What did you think of Thrash?
Well, as usual, since we have the internet's foremost shark aficionado here on the show with us, I am going to go ahead and defer first thoughts to Mr. Don and Ellie. So let's go with Don. Don, what did you think of Thrash?
As it should be. I had a blast with this. This was so much fun. I will get the comparisons right out of the open and say this is absolutely 100% crawl with copy F, crocodile, insert shark, um, repeated throughout the entire film. I do not care. I had so much fun with this. This is exactly the kind of goofy, silly kind of movie I want. Um, I like the setup. It's really to the point, really quick. Gets everybody introduced. You get the girl traveling home. You get the family stuck in the town. You get the pouring wind, kind of hampering the efforts of the marine biologist and his team. You get everything kind of conglomerating together. Storm hits. We get the nice bit of devastation. We get a nice, series of accidents that kind of trap everybody in the area. And then we get the sharks coming in and they just start doing what sharks do. And they start, ripping people to pieces. And, it becomes a race of how are we going to get out of the water, get out of here without drowning in the water or drowning by shark attack. And I'm not going to say that the incidents weren't original or very creative. Like I said, this is very much crawl with crocodiles copied F out and sharks inserted into the premise. But I really like the way it works. Some of the attacks are far more intense than you'd expect. Some of the early scenes with the pregnant woman, I really enjoyed, the attempts to rescue her and get her out of there. And then, that's when we finally get the big shark attacks, or I should say the first shark attacks. The, later scenes where the kids are trapped in the house and you're trying to, maneuver themselves around the furniture without falling into the water. Nice to, bit of tension there. Nice, series of set pieces trying to make sure that you get the sharks involved as much as you can. And yeah, it builds to a great finale. I really like the ending here. We're gonna keep that under wraps, but I really enjoyed the way it finishes. I do have one minor gripe. I'm not entirely sure how spoilery it is, so I'm just gonna get this right out of the open just to make sure. But I was slightly disappointed in how insignificant the marine biologist and his team were in the rescue operations. Um, I'll discuss that a little bit later time, but I don't want to give completely everything away. Just I was a little disappointed that they weren't that significant to the rescue operations compared to how prominently they're featured in the first act. I mean, the first act is pretty much them plus the girl coming home. So it kind of makes it out to where they're going to be this major force factor driving the film, but then they're kind of stranded off course for the majority of the film, and it's a race to get back in time to save everyone. But yeah, they're not really that prominent in the film, but I really don't want to say much more just because I don't want it to be spoilerific. So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I don't have much to really complain about otherwise. The sharks look good. We get, a nice enough looks at them to where they're not all that fake. We get a nice little mixture of species here. We get great whites, we get bulls, we get a third species. I didn't get a good enough look at them to say what they are, but I think that they're oceanic white tips. I think those are the ones at the very beginning. I think that's the first species we see, but then after that, it's pretty much bulls or great whites. So, um, like I said, I don't want to be. I'm not completely confident on the first attacks, but I think the rest of the film are bulls or great whites. So we get a nice little mixture there. They look good. The film is not cheesy as you'd think. It's more on the serious side, but it's just goofy, silly premise because it's crawl. So yeah, you're gonna recognize everything what's going on pretty quickly, and I enjoy that. So is this top 10 of the year? For me, it is just because I do things differently than everybody else on the show. Mine are, of course, films that are covered on the show itself. So as of now, this is maybe my number two. At worst, it's number two. Could be my number one, but yeah, either way, definite highlight. Really enjoyed this one. I had a lot of fun with it, and yeah, I was really glad that again, everybody decided to take the weekend off from the theaters and let this grace screens the way it should be. So yeah, since I don't have much else, I guess Mike, back to you, and or I guess I should say, fuck Mike, Venom, back to you.
All right. So going into this one, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch it on Friday when it first dropped. I got to watch it yesterday, which was Sunday. So the movie had already been out for a couple of days. And I heard some reviews that weren't very flattering. Like a lot of people were saying how this movie was fairly dull, not too exciting, just not a very compelling shark movie. Well, my friends, I am very happy to say that I 100% disagree with those reviews. I absolutely love this movie. I'm right there with Don. And it's not even necessarily the fact that it's a shark movie. Like, I thought this was a really well made movie. Like, there's some impressive cinematography in here, nice underwater shots. I was very impressed with the first shot of the great white that we get about halfway through the film. The very first shark attack, like Don mentioned, with the pregnant woman trapped in the car, I thought was just great. I think what really worked for me in this movie is how grounded in reality it was, and which also might be the reason why maybe a lot of people didn't like it. I think a lot of people just like over the top crazy shark action when they watch a shark movie, especially nowadays. They want a lot of attacks, lots of blood, body parts getting ripped off, and we do get a certain amount of that in this movie, but it's not like, just like I said, it's just not over the top. Like, there's a couple of great overhead shots where we see like a single person swimming in the water, and in more over the top shark movies we would see like a fucking school of sharks all swimming around, but in this movie they pepper it with like a couple of sharks here and there, which, like I said, just grounds it more in reality. Now, obviously, the ending gets a little over the top, and like Don said, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But for my money, that was the only scene that really felt like unrealistic. Like the levee breaking looked great. I gotta say, this was some of the nicest flood special effects I've ever seen. Like, and this is since this didn't hit theaters, I'm assuming that the budget is going to be a little bit lower. And I honestly was very impressed with just the flooding special effects. Like when that levee first broke and the water starts flooding into the town, I was just in awe of how nice those shots were looking. Another thing that I liked about the movie is the characterizations. I mean, everybody that you were supposed to hate was very hateable, and everybody that you were supposed to like were very likable. And I like that, you don't get as much of the human drama in this one as you do in some of the other shark movies. You get a little bit, mind you, especially with the family, with the foster kids. But aside from that, it's really just a story of survival, of these people surviving. And what's funny is that this movie kind of answered a question that I've actually had for a long time, and that's, what do agoraphobes do when there's an evacuation notice? I mean, for those who don't know, of course, agoraphobia is a term for the fear of basically leaving your house or leaving your safe space. There's a great scene early in the movie with our agoraphobe leaving her house to try to get food because she can't get delivery because of the storm that's coming. And it's just this great scene where once she gets a couple of blocks away from her house, she just starts getting the anxiety. And then she's one of her neighbors who hasn't seen her in a long time starts talking to her, and the anxiety gets even higher. And I just thought that was just so well done. So yeah, the movie Thrash answers a question I've had for years. Whether that's the only answer, obviously, I think the easy answer is most agoraphobes are just going to stay in their house until it comes crashing down on top of them and they die. So it was nice to see that. Like I said, Likable, very likable characters. The pregnant woman is great. The agoraphobe, her uncle, the kids, the foster kids in that family, just everybody. I mean, even the TV reporters. And usually in movies like this, TV reporters are usually made to be just kind of scum who will do anything for a story. And you get a little bit of that with these guys, but they're at least very respectful of the marine biologists that they're working with. They're not trying to boss them around, they're not trying to control the situation. They understand that they're not in their element, so they defer to the marine biologists, the experts, and I like that. Like I said, I can't say enough good things about this movie. I love the performances. I love the effects. We get a spectacular head chomp in this one, which happens to the best possible character in the movie, which we'll get into later. But just overall, I had a blast with this movie. Admittedly, I already said that the ending is a little over the top, but I mean, I let out of an audible yeah when that scene happened, when the actual thing that we'll be talking about later happened. I'm sure Don was right there with me because a creature that's usually a villain in most shark movies ends up turning into the hero in this one, and I kind of like that change. So yeah, just overall, I really really enjoyed this movie. Like I said, if you're looking for one of those crazy over the top shark movies, this is not the Meg by any stretch of the imagination. But and honestly, Don's comparison to Crawl is apt. I mean, I think Crawl is maybe a half a step better than this one. But that's neither here nor there. Thrash was a solid movie, and I'm right there with Don. This is probably in my top 3 for the year, despite having a lowly 5.1 rating on IMDb, which is absolutely a travesty.
It'll be fixed when I put my review up. Don't worry.
I already put mine up while you were talking, so hopefully that'll increase the score. But yeah, like I said, if you're into grounded, very realistic interpretations of sharks and their behaviors and everything else, and even the fact like the foster kids took some information that they learned from Shark Week, which another kudos for Shark Week. Kids, watch Shark Week. You might learn something that'll help you out later on in life. So yeah, like I said, I had a blast with this movie. Very fun. Easily probably a top 3 or 4 for me on the year, which I know is going to be a little high, maybe a little excessive for some people who saw the movie and maybe didn't like it as much. And again, if you didn't like it, that's fine. But like I said, I like horror that's somewhat grounded in reality. Yes, there's a place for the crazy, over the top, sensational horror movies, the Conjurings and the Insidious movies like that. But to get something grounded like this, I really enjoyed it. This movie kind of reminded me, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the shark movie that barely had any sharks in it with Alicia Silverstone, when it was just her and her husband. Well, was it Requiem? Thank you. Yes. Like this movie reminded me a little bit of that, where they concentrated more on the human survival aspects of it rather than the violence and the gore. Yes, we do get the violence and the gore here, but it's not the focal point of the film. It's definitely the human characters, how they survive, what they're willing to do to survive. And I'm all for it. So yeah, I'm gonna leave my general thoughts on that and say this one gets a high recommend from me. Whether you're a big shark fan or not, I would say check out Thrash on Netflix. So back to you, Mike.
Okay, so I guess I'll maybe balance it out by saying I didn't like it as much as you guys. I did think it was a little dull, but I like the shark stuff in it. Okay, I just don't like how nothing looks real. I hate the digital effects in it. The best parts to me were like the few spots where it looked like they might have used like an actual, I don't know, I don't want to say puppet, but like maybe some type of like build. It was like a couple shots where like a shark head would bump up against something like close up where it looked like it maybe wasn't digital. Um, I actually like the flood aspects in this movie more than the shark stuff. I think it worked better just as a straight like natural weather disaster movie, and I didn't really care about the shark stuff in it. It was okay. I do like the comparison to Crawl because that's pretty much what it is. I think we get a sequence with a pregnant character dealing with labor, and I think that's probably like the most tense sequence in the movie to me. I do like the guy who tells the story of the hippopotamus. That was a cool little story thrown in.
Yeah, I love that actor, but I always mispronounce his name. It's Jimon Hansu, something like that. We
Yeah,
probably know him from like
that's
Quiet Place Part Two and stuff like that. But yeah, I love that actor, and as soon as I saw him, I was very happy.
But yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. To me, this is just like an okay, your typical like VOD 6 out of 10 movie. I didn't find it to be anything special. It's definitely nowhere close to the top of the year for me. Well, top 10, I don't know. Like, it's still early enough where I it could be just because I feel like this year kind of got off to a good start, and then a lot of theatrical releases started leveling off where they're not bad, but I don't feel that most of them. I'll say they shouldn't be top teners. If this year like rounds out to be like a good solid year, I don't expect a lot of what I would assume is on my top 10 now to be there. So hopefully not. If this is a good year to me, this one won't be anywhere close to the top 10, but it was okay. I don't know. It just feels like a very typical like VOD kind of. I don't know. I don't know how else to put it. I didn't think it was anything special. It was just okay. It just feels like the same Shark Attack movie we've got over the past few years. Same. Like I graded about the same as all those. So yeah, I don't really have much to say about it. It just wasn't for me. But it wasn't bad. It was just okay. It was probably as good as anything I saw in the theater this weekend. If that, actually, no, I don't even want to say that. But
Oh, I saw my potential number one in the theaters this weekend, but I'll talk about that later.
yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, I saw three movies, but I think only two of them are horror. I'm trying to think of what the other one. But well, when you bring something up, maybe that'll be like, oh yeah, that was the other one. But yeah, like I don't want to because you guys like it so much, it's gonna sound like I didn't like it, but it's not that I didn't like it. I just feel like this is like kind of like the same caliber of like what I typically expect when I throw on like a Netflix or I would say Shutter, although Shutter they're so hit or miss. Like I don't even want to like poison pill it by saying a Shutter movie, but I'll say like Netflix or Prime original or it's like what I would expect or like a Hulu where it's fine for what it is, but it does nothing to like separate itself from the pack. Like comparing it to something like the Meg, like I get like yeah, the Meg's like a much more over the top movie, but like a lot of people had some problems with the Meg, but just different issues. But um, yeah, I don't know what else to say. We did get a pretty really cool shot at the end of the movie. I guess that was like the money shot of the movie involving
Mhm.
a shark. That was pretty cool. But it's just that like I don't know, I just am very turned off by like VOD digital stuff. It makes me like it just gives me a reaction where like I just automatically don't like it and when I see it and it's hard. I'm trying to think of the right term. It's like a mental block for me that like when movies use it, it has to be a very good in other ways for me to get over not like penalizing a movie for relying on it. And I don't think this movie was good enough in other ways to like overlook the digital effects I didn't find to be that good. But overall, I still think it's like a serviceable Shark Attack movie. Like if you like Shark Attack movies, there's no reason you shouldn't watch it. It's plenty good enough to give a shot to, and plenty of people are gonna like it more than me, as evidenced by my co-host. So like I don't think anything they brought up about it I would categorize as like wrong to me. It's just that I didn't enjoy it as much as them, but it's nowhere like near bad enough to say like, oh my God, avoid this, don't watch it. It's just an okay, decent, serviceable movie to me. So I'll leave it at that.
And that was a lot of the reviews that I was reading this weekend, is that people were kind of unenthusiastic about the film. Why it worked for me and Don is beyond me. I mean, obviously Don being, the Shark fan number one, it might be a little bit more obvious. I'm not nearly the Shark fan that Don is, even though I am a gigantic fan of shark movies. But like I said, that's a lot of what I was reading this weekend and hearing on hearing on like YouTube reviews and things like that, is that it just didn't have enough, either didn't have enough shark attacks, or didn't have enough gore, or didn't have enough, whatever action sequences, whatever you want to go with. That's part of the reason why I loved it, because like I said, it was fairly grounded in reality. And as far as the CGI thing, I don't have a problem with CGI when you're talking about a creature that can't be domesticated. Like you can't train sharks to attack people, on film. Yes, you can incorporate shots of real sharks in there, which there are. There's plenty of shots of real sharks in this movie. But and there are a couple of prosthetic sharks in here, like Mike said, a couple mostly to do with the shark attacks, like, especially when the redneck guy with the stepkids or the foster kids, when he comes out of the water and the shark is like on his hand, that's very obviously a prosthetic. I mean, that would have been way too good to be CGI. But like I said, if you're dealing with creatures that can't be filmed or trained, then I kind of have to accept the CGI. It's kind of like if somebody made a hippo horror movie, if it has to be all CGI. Like the hippos are some of the most aggressive animals on the fucking planet. You're not going to actually try to film one
is.
and put them. Uh-huh.
There is
There is what?
a hippo, a creature feature.
No, there's many. Oh, no. I'm not saying that there aren't. I'm saying that you can't train them. You can't actually film a hippo attacking someone, and that's what I'm saying. Is that if you can't get a creature to actually be trained, or to be able to use a prosthetic creature like Spielberg was able to with Jaws, you have to accept the CGI. Well, maybe you don't have to accept it. That's a misnomer. You just have to accept the fact that that's all they can do. You can't film a great white attacking a human being, because, I mean, what are the odds that you're going to be there, and what human is going to sacrifice themselves for the sake of a movie? So, like I said, the CGI did not bother me at all in this movie. And trust me, I am right there with Mike in the sense that it takes me out of movies a lot of times. But like I said, since they can't film these shark attacks with real sharks, and they would probably look stupid with prosthetic sharks, I'm okay with the CGI. I didn't have a major problem with it. So, on top of the fact that the biggest CGI shot in this movie, Mike said he liked. So go figure.
Exactly. So, that was the weird thing for me, was that wow, the scene with the most glaringly obvious CGI is the one that he praises.
It happens, I guess. But like I said, that is the most over the top scene in the movie. And I feel like if the movie had more of that, maybe it would have been more universally praised, kind of like Under Paris. Under Paris is a way more over the top shark movie than this one. And that one got a lot more praise when it came out, whereas this one's just getting a lot more negative reviews. And I feel like most of that is because of how grounded in reality it is. How the sharks aren't, there's no like feeding frenzy or anything in this movie, which thank God they didn't do. I fucking hate when movies try to put that in there. But Yeah, I mean, there's not much else we can really talk about without really getting into spoilers. Well, and spoilers. It's a shark movie. I'm pretty sure we all know how it's going to end, except for that final scene, which few of us probably would have predicted. But and if you're watching something like The Meg, you might predict something like that, but not in something that's more grounded like this. So yeah, I guess if my co-hosts don't have anything else non-spoiler to add, we can get into the spoiler conversation, gentlemen.
Yeah, mine's the one issue I wanted to bring up is due later, so yeah, I'm good.
Cool.
Sure.
All right. Well, not really any reason to get into a walkthrough necessarily with this one. It's your basic shark movie. A flood occurs. They're on the coast. I don't think they ever tell us. Do they ever tell us what city they're in? Because at first I thought they were in Florida, but then the foster kids made that Florida joke at the end of the movie, and it's like, oh, they're not in
Yeah,
Florida.
the accents kind of made me think South Carolina or maybe North Carolina.
Maybe Louisiana,
Do
the
we?
Bayou.
No, because it looked more like it was. Well, I mean, they talked Levy, so maybe.
I don't know, but yeah, I mean, they're obviously it's a coastal town.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, so there's a Category 5 storm, Hurricane Henry coming into town. The levee breaks, the town floods, sharks invade the town, and obviously throughout the film, or at least in the first act of the film, we meet all our main players. We talked about our agoraphobic character. Her name's Dakota, played by Whitney Peak. We have a pregnant woman named Lisa. We have our boy Jamon, who plays Dr. Dale Edwards. He is our marine biologist. And we've got a cast of no names after that. But like I said, I don't have a major problem with any of the performances in this one. I thought this was fairly well acted. And basically it's a survival film. It's really just watching all these different groups, the family, the foster family, and how they survive. I like, not to say that I like the fact that that the foster parents were neglectful pieces of shit, because they were basically, we see that in the film, we see that they're getting a $1,500 stipend per month for taking care of these kids, but then they're feeding them like grits and like bread sandwiches and shit while they're eating steaks and drinking premium beer and everything else. Like, I'm sure it happens a lot in this country, but goddamn, does it suck to have to see it, especially with 3 foster kids, so yeah, eventually that's the guy that ends up getting his hand, and apparently he says that he has one of his butt cheeks bitten off, but I don't think they actually ever show it to us. That would have been an interesting shot. But yeah, and he's also the character who gets half of his head chomped off during his death scene, which was absolutely stellar. I thought it looked great. It's quick enough that the CGI didn't bother me. It's just a quick chomp, and then top half of his head is missing. That's probably the goriest thing in this whole movie. We get some arms ripped off, stuff like that. Nothing too crazy. Most of the shark attacks, of course, occur underwater, so it's really just pools of blood appearing around these people. And then, I mean, basically the movie is just Dr. Edwards' journey from where he works to where his niece Dakota is staying. He knows that Dakota is an agoraphobic and that she's not going to leave the house even when the authorities are saying this is a mandatory evacuation, you have to leave. And by the way, did anybody else find that one line from the newscast to be, I don't know, partially funny and partially head scratching? During a newscast in the movie, the reporter says police have requested that if people decide to ignore the evacuation order and stay in their house, police are requesting that they write their name and birthday in permanent marker on their arm so their bodies can be identified later. They actually said this on the news. So the police, all the authorities knew what kind of storm this was. They knew that this was going to be a storm of storms, if you will. And I mean, obviously, I don't think a newscaster would ever say that on television in real life, but I just found it so funny because it's basically just the police officer's way of saying that we're not joking. Get the hell out of your house. This is not a drill. But yeah, that line just that was interesting to me. And then let's go ahead and get to our finale. Oh, well, by the way, Lisa does, of course, give birth. There's a scene where she's in Dakota's house. Well, first of all, she gets trapped in a car, which leads to the death of two men that are trying to help her. That's the first shark attack that we see on screen. And then Dakota, all the credit in the world to Dakota, despite being an agoraphobe, she still gets out of the house, traverses this video game like maze of like rooftops and cars to get across the water to Lisa, who is trapped in her car, and the waters are rising. And of course, she's pregnant. So blah, blah, blah. So I thought that was a really cool set piece. Dakota going out and getting Lisa. And then Lisa ends up going into labor, giving birth, literally giving birth underwater, which I know underwater birth is kind of a trendy thing right now. A lot of people are doing that in different birthing facilities. I don't know if you can do that in a hospital, but I know there's birthing facilities where you can do the water birth, if you will. So Lisa ends up getting the water birth that she wanted anyway, but maybe not in as clean a water as she wanted. And then after she gives birth to the baby, we get this great overhead shot of like the blood and placenta and everything else kind of floating in the water around her. And then we see a couple of sharks start circling her. I thought that shot was amazing. I mean, hell, the very first shot of the movie is amazing. Just the shot of Dr. Edwards' boat on the water and then the storm clouds out in the distance coming in. I thought that opening shot was great. So eventually, yes, Dr. Edwards does make it to Dakota's house, and he's able to, basically save her, Lisa, and Lisa's newborn baby, leaving us with a very happy ending. But then we do get a little not a stinger necessarily, but basically we see a character who's basically been following the storm on like computers and everything. And the movie ends with him seeing another even bigger storm headed towards the coast. And literally the movie just ends with him saying, "Oh, fuck." And the movie ends right there. No mid or post-credit scene, so you don't have to stay past the credits. My friends, this movie is an hour and 26 minutes long. It's sub 90 minutes. I'm not going to say it gets to the action very fast because it does spend the majority of its first act setting up characters, setting up the storm, the evacuation efforts, things like that. But then once we hit the half-hour mark and we get that first shark attack, it's just suspense and tension pretty much throughout the rest of it. I know Mike said that the only real scene that he kind of felt any kind of tension was the birthing scene. And I agree with him that was a very tense scene. I don't think it was the only tense scene in the movie. I think the foster kid swimming down to the basement after his uncle is eaten by sharks to try to get like some steaks out of the fridge so that they can create a diversion. What they end up doing is taking a bunch, because it turns out that the foster parents are like survivalists, so they've got a basement full of like food and guns and everything else, and dynamite, which is what the kids end up grabbing. The oldest of the foster kids grabs a bunch of sticks of dynamite, kind of duct tapes them around a couple of big T-bone steaks, throws them in the water. And then this is where the little kid, the youngest of the kids, said, "Well, we have to create a vibration because sharks are attracted to vibration. I saw it on Shark Week." Fucking awesome. That's what I'm talking about, kids. Watch Shark Week. You might learn something that'll save your life later on. So I mean, like I said, there's not really, the story's fairly basic, nothing exceptional about it. That's the one thing that I'll agree with Mike about, that the story itself is just fairly basic. It's fairly ABC, nothing too crazy. It's more about the performances. It's more about the grounded shark attacks, that aren't crazy over the top. But then we get to the end of our film, and I'm sorry, I actually skipped our finale. Just as Dr. Edwards is about to get to Dakota and Lisa, who are, they're in the water. Dakota, Lisa, and the newborn baby are in the water, and a bull shark is charging them, about to attack, and literally, just like Hollywood, as the shark leaps out of the water to attack them, here comes our great white, the only great white that we have in the film, to take down the bull shark in midair and save the day. So yeah, I thought it was interesting how when they first mentioned the great white, especially the fact that she was pregnant, which means that she's going to be constantly eating, constantly looking for food. So I figured that she was going to be like, you know, a thorn in the side of all the protagonists in this film, but nope, she ends up being the goddamn hero. So kudos to our great white shark. I'll give her credit for that. And yeah, that's pretty much the gist of the film. There's not really a whole lot more to go over. Obviously, there's little scenes here and there that, you know, work. The fact that the uncle tries, not the uncle, the foster dad tries to escape, leaving the kids at the house, but then he ends up getting his arm and butt cheek torn off. And then the kids are able to get their kind of last bit of revenge against these. Well, not so much against the foster mom, because she dies pretty much right away as soon as she's first attacked. But the foster dad ends up living a little bit longer and then getting half his head chomped off. So that was entertaining. I'm sure that was definitely more of a guilty pleasure kill for us audience members. But you know what? Sometimes the guilty pleasure kill is nice. I'm not always the biggest fan of it, of setting up a character, a really shitty character, just so we can watch him die later. But in this movie, like I said, it worked for me. But like Mike was saying, nothing about this movie is necessarily ultra exceptional. You know, this movie doesn't really hold a candle to stuff like Under Paris, The Shallows, obviously Jaws, things like that. But it is a solid fucking movie. Like I said, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the performances. I enjoyed the filmmaking. I enjoyed the shark attacks. And just overall, I enjoyed the ending, you know, the kind of guilty pleasure aspect of watching that great white leap out of the water and take down that bull shark. So, yeah, like I said, overall, I walked away really enjoying this movie. I mean, any movie that commands my attention enough that I don't pick up my phone once during the 90-minute runtime, I mean, that's saying something about the film, you know, because ultimately I get bored very, very easy. And despite this being fairly slow at various points throughout the film, I was still invested. I was still, you know, totally, it had my attention from pretty much beginning to end. And, you know, the naysayers, I mean, all I can say is, I mean, sometimes, you know, people want a little bit more in their shark movie or in their horror in general. Like, you know, we've kind of talked about it on this show, how sometimes some horror movies go for the less is more aspect and it just doesn't work. This movie kind of also went for that less is more, but it worked for me. At least for Don and myself, it worked great. So yeah, anything you guys want to talk about now that we can get into spoilers?
Well, I mean, like I said, to me, the one thing that I wasn't a huge fan of is that the marine biologist is set up pretty much early on as like the big savior, but he shows up like right at the very end. And I mean, I know that there's like geographic conveniences and like why he's not there, but I mean, you'd figure that he would have been a little bit more proactive in the actual saving at the end, just as more of, you know, like because of like how protective he was of her at the beginning, how, you know, he was trying to like, you know, do the right thing and, you know, save the sharks and all that. You figured he would have been, you know, they would have found a way to get him there a little sooner, maybe not, you know, strand him so far away or, you know, have like the heroic moment come a little earlier to, you know, maybe like, you know, be present there to, you know, for the birth and then, you know, like have like the other guys like fight the shark off. And then like, you know, just when it looks like they're about to be overwhelmed, then the great white comes in and saves everyone. I don't know if
No,
that would have, I don't know if that
mhm.
would have been like, you know, cheesier or like, you know, maybe a little bit too like silly or something like that. But I figured that that would have been the route that they gone with where
Mhm.
he's, you know, as present as he is. And, you know, I mean, it's Desmond House and, you know, you probably would have given him like a little bit more screen time as is. So I figured that would have been like the way that they go rather than, you know, him showing up and then 2 seconds later, everything's already over.
Yeah, I mean, With the runtime being so short, I mean, you're not going to have a lot of fluff in the movie. I obviously, because of the actor who plays Dr. Edwards, I would have liked to have seen more of him because he's probably the best actor in this film, and someone that we as genre fans know well from various movies. So I would have liked to have seen more of them, but like I said, with a 86-minute runtime, you kind of got to get to the point quicker than most filmmakers probably would like to. I'm sure the guy who made this movie, or woman, the person who made this movie.
It's Tommy Wirkola, the guy that
Oh,
did
okay.
Dead Snow.
No, okay. So I'm sure Tommy would have loved to have made a 2-hour film and explored a little bit more of, Dr. Edwards' character, maybe more of Lisa and her mother, stuff like that. But honestly, with the short run time, I'm okay with it. It did bother me a little bit that he wasn't more involved in the finale, that they kind of relied on the Great White saving the day. But ultimately, it worked for me. I walked away from the movie with a smile on my face. So I have no major complaints. Like I said, some little, gripes, some little ticky tack stuff here and there. But overall, this movie worked for me, just like the Requiem worked for me. And, a lot of the more grounded shark movies, just they work for me. And I'm very glad that, Netflix put this out. And obviously it's not getting the greatest reviews. So who knows if we'll actually get to see Thrash 2, even thrashier. But I don't know. Fingers crossed. Hopefully the fact that it's on Netflix and maybe it's not the highest budgeted movie, they'll be able to do another one. But even if they don't, I'm okay with this being a standalone, and it's something that I'll revisit periodically. I can't say it'll be an annual watch by any stretch, but I think I'm gonna have some good rewatches with this one, and I'm gonna rewatch it soon with Mrs. Venom because she wasn't actually home when I watched it. And because of this being a little bit more grounded and less gory, I think she'll actually get into it too. Because, for those who don't know, Mrs. Venom isn't the biggest horror fan in the world. She tolerates it for me, but yes, periodically she will kind of praise a horror movie. Most recently, I think it was Dr. Sleep. Like, she actually ended up liking Dr. Sleep even more than I did, and I fucking loved it. So, like I said, she's not the biggest horror fan, but because, like I said, this one is more character driven than shark driven, I think she'll probably dig it. And I think if you're a fan of movies like that are more character driven than shark driven, it might work for you. But like I said, if you're looking for over the top action like Under Paris, with lots of kills and lots of gore, then this probably isn't the movie for you. But again, it's on Netflix. It's on Netflix, so it's not going to cost you anything to watch, and it's under 90 minutes, so it's not even going to take you all that long. So yeah, for me, I loved it, and I'm going to shut up now. So back to you, Mike.
Okay. Well, I think that'll probably wrap up this episode then of Thrash and Fresh Cuts. So, what new do we have? I don't think I have anything new because, I mean, I guess technically the new episode of Cinema Beef is out. I did miss that one. I was out of town, but no problem to just promote the show regardless, since technically I'm a host on it. And then we got another one of those recording this week, and an episode of the main show all scheduled in this upcoming week. So a lot of movie watching for shows, in addition to all the other movie watching we do. But what about you, Venom? Anything new?
Actually, nothing much. I didn't do anything as far as podcasting. I didn't do anything Easter weekend. And then I might have mentioned last week that a very good friend of mine passed away recently. So his funeral was yesterday, which definitely didn't leave me in the mood to want to watch or record anything. So honestly, the only thing I got is the latest episode of Creature Comforts, episode number 48, where we looked at what was that? Was that the Food of the Gods? Or am I behind?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Food of the Gods. Right. The next episode is Mosquito from 1988. So that'll be episode 49, hopefully recording sooner than later. But like I said, I've already got 2 shows recording this weekend, so that'll probably be it for this weekend for me, as I will also be on that next episode of Cinema Beef, because we're literally talking about 2 of my favorite movies ever, but we'll talk about that after we record the episode. So that's it for me.
All right. How about you, Don?
Yeah, no, same. I don't have much else going on.
Okay.
And then I did want to say that I did watch both of the genre films that came out in theaters this weekend. Faces of Death, I think you can avoid. Not really a whole lot of redeeming qualities to that movie. Basically, the story of a serial killer who's inspired by the original Faces of Death VHS from back in the early 80s, or actually, it might have even been the 70s. I think the first one came out in 79, if I remember
I think
correctly.
so, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a movie that its premise is kind of cool because it kind of reminded me of Human Centipede 2, where the killer from that movie was actually inspired by the events of the original Human Centipede. But yeah, it's just not great. And then the
That
movie,
that
oh,
third act, man, it was like a competition between every character of who could make the stupidest decisions and moves.
yes, you are
Like,
correct.
like to be honest, I actually thought that because my biggest curiosity going into it was how are they going to incorporate something that feels antiquated in 2026? Like, it just doesn't seem like something like Faces of Death would be that big of a deal. But I thought they managed to incorporate it somewhat okay and understandable. And
Yeah.
I was like, okay, and the performances were fine. But then that third act, I was just like, oh man, you guys, you didn't know how to wrap this up, did you? Because you just
Exactly.
got ridiculous.
Yeah, big time. And then the movie that I actually did enjoy this weekend, Hunting Michael Nichols. Now, this one is a little bit, it leans more towards psychological thriller than horror. But it's basically the story of a woman who is looking for her missing brother. And then one day she finds a piece of media that might suggest that her brother's still alive. And the mystery kind of spirals from there. So I actually had a really good time with this movie. I'm looking forward to watching it again when it hits VOD, because as of right now, it might be my top movie of the year. But like I said, it definitely leans more towards psychological thriller. So if you happen to be in a big enough city that it's actually showing, because I actually saw it at an AMC out here, the exact same theater that I watched Faces of Death. So if you have the opportunity to see it, I would say check it out. But it should be hitting VOD, I would imagine, in less than 30 days, since it is kind of an indie movie. So check it out. Hunting Michael Nichols.
The I didn't see that one, but I saw Exit 8, which is based on the game. So it's funny, I actually have the game. I've had it because PlayStation Plus put it on like free for like, months ago, and I grabbed it and I just didn't have time to play it. From what I'm hearing, the movie is pretty well adapted. So if anyone's familiar with the game, I assume you're familiar with the movie or would be. It's kind of like a loop style story where the guy basically gets stuck in a loop in a subway and has to find his way out. And there's obviously a huge metaphor going on for it, and it kind of has made me more curious to get to the game because I'm sure the setup of the game is the same, and there's probably a lot of like similar things that happen, but I have no idea if the game, the story, like story wise, it's like the same with the same subtext and all that. But assuming we record the main episode someday, I'll talk more about the movie then. Maybe I'll try to get in some of the game before then too, so I can have a better comparison.
There you go. Something to look forward to in the main show.
Yeah, and this week I know there is a theatrical release, isn't there? I
2 of
think.
them. Yes. I mean, the one that I think most people are going to lean towards is The Mummy. Lee Cronin's Mummy comes out this week on my birthday, by the way, this Friday. So I'm last year, the movie that released on my birthday ended up being my number one of the year, of course, being Sinners. So Let's see if The Mummy has something to offer to potentially be a top movie of the year. We'll see. And then the other movie coming out isn't straight horror. It kind of looks like a psychological thriller. It's called Mother May. It actually stars Anne Hathaway as a pop
Oh
star.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we got a couple of genre films opening this weekend, but I would imagine we're going to lean towards The Mummy for this show.
I think so. That's a safe
Yeah.
bet. Mother
Yeah.
May, or I saw a trailer for that like a few weeks ago, and it looks like it's psychological thriller. Maybe there's like horror. Like I'll probably see it just because I don't know what it is, but I've had good luck lately with weekends being able to see like more than one movie. So
Nice.
as long as I have the time, I'll probably get that in as like a second or third movie. But definitely Mummy's going to be the priority this weekend.
Yeah. I vaguely remember what a weekend is. Working in retail, there's no such thing as weekends, my friends.
Cool. All right. Well, that said, that's going to wrap up this episode. Thanks everyone for listening, and we will be back in a week with the next one. Let's say bye to our listeners.
Later.
Stay away from sharks. Or at least maybe if there's one great white around, stay around that one. That one might save your life someday.
Peace.